Welcome to 30 Minutes on the Parsha with our friend for the year, Don Yitzchak Abarbanel. We're doing tonight Parshas Chukas-Balak. We won't certainly do all of Chukas and all of Balak. However, we will cover a very well-known, surprisingly brief passage in the Torah, which has been variously interpreted as the subject of a lot of exegetical attention. And that is Rock My World, Moshe's downfall. So we are referring, of course, to the event of Mei Meriva, Chet Mei Meriva, the waters of contention. And that can be found, if you're with me in the art scroll on page 842, whatever Chumash you are using. We are in the book of Bamidbar, Parshas Chukas. We are at the beginning of chapter 20. ויבואו בני ישראל כל העדה מדבר צין בחודש הראשון וישב העם בקדש ותמס שם מרים ותיקבר שם. This is a kind of context because although it's important in its own right what the Torah says about when this happened and the fact that Miriam died and she was buried in that place, v'tamas sham Miriam v'tikaver sham, but that is the prelude. It's important in its own right, but for our purposes, it's the prelude to what follows. Because of the death of Miriam, it is evident that the provision of water for the people in the course of their extended wanderings in the wilderness, because this is after the 40 years or at the end of the 40 years, was in the merit of Miriam. And with her death, evidently the miraculous wellspring that had sustained them in their travels dried up or disappeared. The congregation had no water. And they gathered against or around Moshe and Aaron, and they were quite contentious. They were, let's say, forceful or almost aggressive. Vayarev ami Moshe. Vayarev is an expression of riv, is to contend or to fight. That's, we said, Mei Meriva, the waters of contention. Vayarev ami Moshe, vayamru leimor, and they said, Lu gavanu b'gva achenu lifnei Adonai. And this is a kind of sarcastic, biting complaint. If only we had died with our brethren before God. As if to say, Moshe, your leadership is such a disappointment. We wish we had died with our brethren, in earlier times, possibly earlier in the 40 years. We're alive at the end of the 40 years, but for what purpose? We're going to die of thirst. Why did you bring us to this wilderness? That we and our livestock should die. Why did you bring us up from Egypt to bring us to this wretched place? There's no vegetation here, there's no fruit, there's no yield of the land, there's no water to drink even. So they fell on their faces, and the glory of God appeared to them. This is the setting for the drama that will follow. Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, take the staff, gather the people, you and your brother Aaron, and speak to the rock, before their eyes, and it will yield its waters. And you will bring forth water from the rock, and you will provide water for the congregation and for their livestock. Moshe, excuse me. Moshe took his staff before God as he had been commanded. He gathered them against the, or opposite this rock, this cliff maybe, boulder. Listen up, you rebels. Will we bring forth water for you from this boulder? Vayarem Moshe's yado, he lifted up his hand, vayachas hasela b'mateo pa'amayim, and he struck the rock with his staff twice. Vayitzu mayim varbim v'teish ta'idau v'yiram. A lot of water came out, and everybody drank. So, although there were some sharp words and some contentious exchange, it sounds like it has a happy ending. Well, it was maybe happy for the people, but it was not happy for Moshe and Aaron. And as we'll see right now, evidently Hashem considered this incident to be a tragedy. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe vel Aharon, Ya'an lo ha'emantim bi lahakdisheni le'nei bnei Yisrael. Since you did not, Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron, and he said, since you did not cause them to believe in me, or maybe you did not believe in me, lahakdisheni, to sanctify me, le'nei bnei Yisrael, before the eyes of the children of Israel. Lachein, therefore, lo savios hakahal hazel haaretz asher nasati lehem. You will not bring this people into the land that I've given them. Hema, now the Torah reflects on it, summarizes it. Hema memorivasha ravuvaneseles arunoivi kadesh bam. These are the waters of contention, the waters of strife, where the children of Israel contended with Hashem, and He was sanctified through them. Now, the passage, although we've read it from beginning to end, the main part of it really is only when Hashem says to Moshe, take the staff, etc. Moshe addresses the people, strikes the rock, water comes forth, and then Hashem says, because of your failing, you will not bring them into the land of Israel. Now, for Moshe, I'm sure for Aaron as well, this was a catastrophe. The fulfillment of his life's mission, which had already been delayed for nearly 40 years because of the sin of the spies, now slips away. He has it within his grasp, and suddenly it is taken from him, or his behavior has caused him to lose it. So, as I said in my few words of introduction, this is the subject of a lot of commentary, and with that, I want to try to cover an ambitious objective with our time together tonight in the comments of Rav Yitzchak Abarbanel. So he makes the observation, which I've pretty much said myself right now, that the identification of the Chet of Moshe and Aaron is obscure. Particularly, if you think about it, what was the sin of Aharon? What did Aaron have to do with it even? It says that people gather around Moshe and Aaron, but Hashem speaks to the two of them, and he says to Moshe, take your staff, speak to the rock. Aaron doesn't say anything. The Torah doesn't say what Aaron has done. Aaron is only like a silent partner in this incident, and yet Aaron bears the same punishment as Moshe. Aaron also is destined to die. In fact, his death is recorded right away in the same Parasha, Parashas Chukas. Aaron's death is immediately recorded, or very shortly after his death is recorded. So whatever Moshe did wrong, and we'll discuss that in detail, difficult to understand what Aaron did wrong. So you could say Moshe and Aaron are a team. What happens to Moshe will happen to Aaron. If Moshe can't go into the land, then it's not right that Aaron should go in. But those are kind of lame explanations. So Abarbanel, Kedarko, as is his style, begins with a long series of questions, some of which I've expressed right now. Whatever he did wrong, whatever they did wrong, he says it's very difficult to understand how whatever it was of such a severity as to bring about this punishment, especially compared to some of the other things that Moshe did, some of his other errors, some of the other things for which he was rebuked, or even not rebuked. And, Moshe's wrongdoing here, whatever it was quite subtle. Now, of course, one could say, which I'm sure is true, that Moshe is held to a very exacting standard. More so than any other person may be, and therefore Moshe's even subtle error or wrongdoing brings with it severe consequences. That could be, but it still begs the question, what really was their transgression? So Abarbanel presents 10 approaches that he has found, he says, in the Mefarshim. And he goes through them one by one in brief, and I would like to do the same in the short time that we have tonight, because his summary of the approaches that were known to him up to his time, and he died in 1509 or 1508, I forget exactly, is a useful, although other later Mefarshim have come up with their own suggestions as well. But I think 10, you'll agree, is enough to keep us occupied for the next few minutes. So he says the first opinion is that of Rashi, that his transgression was that he struck the rock, which he was not told to do. He was told to speak to the rock, instead he struck the rock, and this was his Wrongdoing, this is probably the most well-known explanation. And as I said, this is the explanation of Rashi. Ramban has a lot of questions on it, though. Ramban says, why did Hashem tell him, take the staff? What was he supposed to do with the staff? What does he need the staff for? He doesn't need the staff to speak to the rock. The fact that he was told to take the staff implies he's supposed to do something with it. Besides which, the Torah describes how Moshe in Parshas Bishalach at Chorev, that had a similar circumstance, and then Moshe took the staff, he struck the rock, and water came out, and that was great. So how is it that at the time previously it was acceptable and now it's going to be a catastrophe? And does that explain Ma'altem bi, you've betrayed me, lo ha'emantem bi, you didn't believe in me, lahakdisheni, this criticism, that is to say, the consequence of the wrongdoing is beyond what one would what is reasonable to expect. And besides which, as we mentioned, why was he supposed to take the staff if not to do something with it? These are the questions of Ramban. By the way, hundreds of years, about 200 years before Abarbanel, we have Ramban, who also reviews the suggestions that were advanced up to his time, and he comes up with his own suggestion, and we'll get to that one shortly as well. The second opinion Abarbanel mentions is the opinion of Chazal, that Moshe was like dismissive of the honor of the congregation, even though it says that they confronted Moshe in an insolent way. We wish we had died with our brethren. Why did you take us up from Egypt to die in this thankless land, this wasteland? We would have rather stayed in Egypt. So Moshe, once again, not for the first time, is confronted with quite aggressive language on the part of the Jewish people. Nevertheless, for him to say, Shimuna Hamorim, listen up, you rebels, it's wrong for Moshe to denigrate the Jewish people in that way. This is the explanation of Chazal, and this is the meaning of what it says later on, where Moshe says, Hashem, you've rebelled against God from when I first know you. And he says the problem with that is, I'm sorry, Abarbanel says the problem with that is that later on Moshe says, and if that was the reason for his downfall, why does Moshe in the book of Devarim say this effectively the same thing? And if that was his chait here in our Parsha, then why did he repeat the same error in denigrating the Jewish people, that you've been rebelling against God from when I first met you? If that was a reason for his downfall, why did he repeat the error or the sin? The third opinion, he says, is that of the Rambam. The Rambam says that the Chet of Moshe was that he got angry when we don't find that Hashem was angry. The Torah mentions on many occasions that Hashem was angry or he acted in a way which would be reflective of anger. We don't find that here. It's true that people were aggressive regarding Moshe, but we don't find that Hashem is, so to speak, upset by it or feels the people have acted improperly. The people are thirsty. They and their families and their livestock will die of thirst in the desert without any source of water. It's quite understandable why they panicked and they approached Moshe. And then for Hashem says, we read it already a few minutes ago in Pasuk Ches, take the staff, gather the people, and Hashem told Moshe how to produce water. But Moshe said, Shimuna Hamorim, listen up, you rebels. According to the Rambam, Moshe evidently got angry. And if Moshe got angry, the people will assume that Hashem is angry, because someone like Moshe surely only reflects the greatness of Moshe was, as the greatest of the prophets. He reflects the divine attitude, the divine perspective. If Moshe got angry, then of course the people will assume that Hashem is angry at them, and therefore Moshe was punished because of the anger. So Abarbanel queries that as well. He says, well, what about when it says Moshe katsaf al pugudei hachayal b'chinam? We find other times later on, actually in next week's, really 2 weeks' time, when Moshe was angry with the pugudei hachayal for katsaf Moshe, and we don't find him for no reason, because actually it was not justified. We don't find Moshe was punished for that. when he said Shimona Hamorim Tochacha, this is the matter of rebuke. Al derech mamim ha'isem. Lo kas v'ketzef. We don't find, says Abarbanel, that the Torah, the language of the Torah does not prove that Moshe was angry. It just says he was rebuking them, maybe rebuking them harshly, maybe he was condemning their behavior. But we don't find that that doesn't prove that Moshe was angry. And other places where the Torah does say Moshe was angry, we don't find any negative consequences. Says the fourth explanation is that of Ramban. Ramban quotes Rabbeinu Hananel, and he says that the chait of Moshe and Aaron was one letter. Minha, uh, minha, sorry. Shimon Amon Hamin Hasela Hazeh Notzi Lachem Mayim. The letter is the Nun. Notzi Lachem Mayim means shall we bring forth water? Hamin Hasela Hazeh Notzi Lachem Mayim. Shall we bring forth? Which implied that Moshe and Aharon were the ones with the power to produce water. That the suggestion or the hint that the people are expecting them to produce water, and of course Moshe does exactly that, suggests like he's arrogating too much importance to himself or to themselves. And that, by the way, would also explain why Aaron was involved, even though it was Moshe who said it. I'll read the words again. Vayikyalu Moshe v'Aaron, vayomer lahem, doesn't say v'yomru lahem, vayomer lahem, presumably Moshe is speaking. Shimon Ahamor, Hamin Asalazah Notzi Lechem. So Moshe was speaking on behalf of himself and Aaron, and by saying Notzi Lechem, so again, he is implying that he and Aaron have the power, or he's really saying, are you challenging me to produce water from here? And they should have said, Yotzi Hashem lachem mayim. Will God bring forth from you for you? But he says that this is also not convincing. Let's not dwell on the failing, the shortcoming in that. Perhaps he feels it's too subtle. It doesn't explain me'ila, treachery, the language and the consequences imply much more egregious failing than just the subtle usage of the word notzi rather than yotzi Hashem. The fifth reason that Abarbanel mentions is the opinion of one who says shikaba mateo pa'amayim. If he had just struck the rock once, that would have been a Kiddush Hashem. But by doing it twice, he's gone too far. Meaning he has diminished the miracle by hitting the rock twice. Very difficult to understand, though, that this is the severe transgression, hitting it twice instead of just hitting it once. Very difficult to accept that. The sixth reason that he advances is that they did not say any song. It says later on that the Jewish people sang a song about the well. Az Yeshir V'nei Yisrael Ali Be'er Enula. But Moshe and Aaron were not involved in that. So they should have sung. They should have sort of led the singing. But again, this is not convincing. He says, besides which, it was only much later on, even though it's narrated in our Parsha, but it was later on when they sang that song, Ale Be'er Enula. The seventh reason is that he mentions that Abarbanel, he mentioned the name of Abarbanel, or Abarbanel is one who cites it, that the people asked for a certain rock. The people wanted Moshe to produce water from a particular rock, and Moshe produced from a different rock. Again, not convincing at all. That's the severe transgression. The eighth reason he says is the reason that Ibn Ezra himself advances that Moshe, because of his anger, so he like interrupted the prophetic inspiration, and like the prophetic communication, he sort of like terminated it needlessly. Doesn't fit in with what the consequence of the Torah describes. The ninth reason that he mentions is the reason of the Baal HaIkarim, that is Rav Yosef Albo, Sefer HaIkarim, And he says that Moshe and Aaron should have taken the initiative, that when the people came to them, Moshe should have prayed to Hashem immediately, or Moshe should have perhaps taken some action. But the people came to Moshe, Moshe fell on his face, and it was left to Hashem to instruct Moshe what to do. If Moshe had demonstrated true leadership, he would have taken more initiative. He says, "V'chein ba'aru im ish Elohim ani tered eish min hashamayim." So, like Eliyahu Hanavi said, if I'm a man of the God, so if I'm the man of God, then let fire come down from heaven, which it did. And Yehoshua said, "Shemesh begiv'on dome." Yehoshua, like proclaimed or instructed the sun to continue to shine in the battle of Givon and Ayalon and that sort of thing. But he says, Gamze bilti nachon, because in the case of the rock in Chorev, when the people contended, Hashem told Moshe what to do. So here as well, Moshe thought that Hashem will instruct me what to do, how to address or how to resolve this crisis of the water shortage. Finally, the 10th reason that he mentions. And he says it's Echad Michachmei Hador, one of the wise people of the generation. I would speculate he might have in mind the Akedas Yitzhak, Rabbi Yitzhak Arama, because he cites him from time to time. Interestingly, he doesn't mention him by name. That upset the members of the Arama family because Rav Yitzchak Arama died in 1494. He was an acquaintance of Abarbanel, and the family claims that Abarbanel almost plagiarizes him by sort of presenting his own ideas, presenting ideas of Rav Yitzchak Arama as if they are ideas of Abarbanel. He doesn't mention him very often by name. Perhaps he's alluding to him here. In any case, what is the explanation that he advances? That he says effectively that uh, the people strove with Moshe, and that they were effectively caught up in the sin of the generation. Basically, he says that uh, really we don't know what the chait was. I don't find it very convincing. Okay, let's maybe put that one to one side. Having reviewed, although perhaps we haven't done justice to them, but 10 possible explanations, let me tell you the novel approach of Abravanel, which he proceeds to substantiate or to prove with 13 different proofs. What is his novel approach? He says that actually Moshe and Aharon were punished not to be compelled to die in the wilderness, not to complete the mission of bringing the Jewish people into the land of Israel, for two separate reasons, not because of this event altogether. This event was only the sort of headline reason. It was he used an expression, he says it is the siba, uh, um, it was a vehicle, it was a circumstantial reason. It's not the actual reason. Lo siba atzmit. It's not the underlying reason. It's not the essential reason. Aaron was punished for his role in the Chet HaEgel. Moshe was punished for his role in the Chet HaMeraglim. So the sin of Aharon in the Chet HaEgel is obvious because the people, Moshe was on the mountain. He was away for longer than the people thought he would be. The people approached Aharon and they said, Kuma Seilanu Elohim Asher Yelchu Lefanenu, etc. We don't know what happened to Moshe. Make us a god, a molten image. And one way or another, Aaron complied with their request, and Aaron was the one who actually made the golden calf, for which he felt very aggrieved, meaning I should say he felt guilty about it. And there's much in Chazal about that, much in the Torah itself about that as well. But the fact is that although he was trying to put them off and he was trying to delay them, and his intention was all for the good, the fact is he participated and he was a catalyst in the Chet HaEgel. It's undeniable. Moreover, according to the sages, uh, Aharon saw that Hur gave up his life because he protested. Aharon did not give up his life. Says Abarbanel, that's why the Torah says, Yan loheman to be lahakadishen, you did not sanctify my name. The reference is not to what happened here with the rock, talking to the people, striking the rock, not singing words of praise or the other explanations, but rather the reference is to what Aaron did in the Chet HaEgel. Now, it's true, the Torah doesn't say so explicitly. Says Abarbanel, the Torah is careful about the honor, about the dignity of Moshe and Aaron, these two great leaders. The Torah does not say explicitly, because of your transgression, you're destined, you're worthy of death. The Torah, on the contrary, Hashem is exacting with the righteous, but Hashem is also forbearing. So rather than bring about the death of Aaron immediately, Hashem delayed it for almost 40 years. Moreover, if Aaron had died and his other sons had died, two of his sons had died already, he only has two more sons. If Eliezer and Itamar had died also because of the hate of Aaron, then there would be no more Kahanim left. But the point is that the severe transgression of Aaron was not what he did here. On the contrary, like we said, what did Aaron do? The Torah doesn't even describe anything that Aaron has done. He's just a companion. He's sort of the sidekick of Moshe on this occasion. Says Abarbanel that Moshe, he was responsible for the Chet HaMaraglim. And this is a novel explanation. I acknowledge that. But he says that if you look closely, the instructions for the Meraglim were quite limited. The Hashem's instruction for the Meraglim. Moshe elaborated. Moshe said, told him a lot more. He said, "Well, when you've got to it, when they go to the land, so they should see, are the people strong or are they weak? Are the cities fortified or are they vulnerable?" And other kinds of questions like that. And that caused them to panic when they saw the people are very powerful. Then the cities are fortified to the heavens. So that's why they panicked. Moshe, it was his own idea. Now, he had in mind, in order to cause them to be more grateful to Hashem, in order to cause them to appreciate what a miraculous, powerful intervention will bring about the demise of this powerful nation, the Canaanim, and the victory of the Jewish people through the divine miraculous intervention. So Moshe wanted to magnify their appreciation. But of course, they were spooked. They were terrified by it. Moreover, if you remember, because I think we did mention it in Parasha Shlach Lecha, perhaps you weren't listening to that shir. I can't expect everyone to listen to every shir, but I'll just remind you that Abarbanel says something else there. He says that Moshe was also responsible for their insecurity, which led them to panic and to say, wow, we'll never conquer this land. They're too powerful for us. Because Moshe said in Devarim, where Moshe reiterates or reviews the events of those fateful days, he says that as we approached the border of the land of Canaan, so I said, Alei Reish, go up and conquer it. Alei Reish, from the word Yerusha, to inherit the land. And Abarbanel says that people understood from that they would no longer benefit from the divine supernatural intervention, and they were on their own. So they thought, if we're on our own, then of course we need military strategy. We need to know how to conquer the land. We don't even have GPS. We don't even know where the roads lead to. So we need spies to tell us that. When the spies came back and said, yeah, it's a wonderful land, but it consumes its inhabitants, etc., that was too much. And the whole fault for this, says Abarbanel, lies at the feet of Moshe Rabbeinu. So at that time, 40 or 39 years earlier, that is the event for which Moshe was destined to be punished. This is the approach of Abravanel. He, as I mentioned, has 13 proofs to it. We don't have time for the 13 proofs. I'll just mention one of them. The eighth one of them, he says, V'hu mofes chotech. And this is a definitive proof. He says that when the punishment of the Meraglim is mentioned in the book of Devarim, in the Parshas Devarim, Gam, Moshe says, Gam bihi sanaf Hashem, Biglalchem. God was angry with me because of you. So it's hard to understand because prima facie, Hashem was not angry with Moshe because of them. Hashem was angry with Moshe because of what Moshe did. But according to Abravanel, we can take it at face value. Hashem was angry with Moshe because the people, when they panicked as a result of the sin of the spies, that whole incident lies at the feet of Moshe. So therefore, it makes it a lot of sense why Moshe was included in the punishment of the spies, because Moshe's wrongdoing had its roots in the Chet HaMeraglim. So even though Moshe didn't perish at that time, but his fate was sealed. It was only now, all of these years later, finally, when the people are ready to enter the land, that Hashem says, Moshe and Aaron, I'm afraid your time is up. But this was just like an opportunity. It was just, I won't say an excuse, but it was a subtle event, also not the happiest, that was the kind of official, formal, superficial reason, but the actual underlying reason is different for each of them, for Moshe and for Aaron, and that is how he explains why the Torah says, Lo hemantem bi lo kidashtem. That refers to Aharon, because Aaron could have made a Kiddush Hashem by dying al Kiddush Hashem. He chose not to do so. And that would have been a dramatic proof that Aaron believes or serves only the God of Israel and doesn't tolerate the idea of making a molten image. Now, again, Aaron, his intention was only for the good, but nevertheless, we can understand why Hashem describes the wrongdoing in terms of Ma'al Tembi, and in terms of Moshe. He says, Marisem P, you have rebelled against my word. That is a reference to Moshe, because Moshe instructed the Meraglim to do things, to inquire about things which Hashem himself had never indicated. So according to this novel interpretation of Abravanel, the Chet of Moshe and Aaron and Mei Meriva was just a kind of superficial, like I said before, the official reason. But the actual reason, which the Torah didn't want to say outright, explicitly, because of the honor of these two great leaders, and also their leadership was still required for the rest of the 39 years, and therefore it was only now, when the 40 years is at the very end, that the event happened that sort of served as the context for this calamitous punishment, which nevertheless was brought upon them because of events that happened so long earlier. So these are some thoughts on our subject for tonight. I think, to me at least, it was a novel interpretation, a new angle on the Chet Mei Meriva, which, as we've seen, and as I'm sure you know, is a subject of a lot of exegetical ingenuity from the days of Abravanel up to his time and subsequent to his time as well. But anyway, something to think about. I wish everybody a wonderful Shabbos.